And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, as always, is my good brother here in the temple, the man behind Distorted Illumination, good brother Monarch.
I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but Bob Seger is underappreciated. He had more than the 2 songs.
Then again, I'm weird because every time I hear Suffragette City, I always think of Minneapolis. Although, you can argue who's overrated, but I will say this: anyone who plays Closing Time on a jukebox where I am is subject to a public flogging.
Good times.
And this is coming from somebody who used to do the whole jukebox bombing where he'd have the same song and repeat for about like 7 or 8 plays.
Now, did you do the thing where you'd put a different song after that 7 plays so everyone's relieved only for the same song to kick back in immediately after?
Yes.
We didn't have jukeboxes around here, so I could never do that. It was sad.
We did, and because of that, there were a few places that had me on a do not serve list.
But yes, today we are here to talk more Cursebrand Chronicles.
Yep. After our interesting detour into Velocity, we're back with Cursebrand Chronicles. Now, last time we tackled the class system, and we got some interesting results with that in the sense that the class designs that we have are definitely more fitting to the setting than more generic affairs, as well as the introduction as well as the proper introduction to the fact that you're going to see a lot of tree design. And those of you who've played a lot of Diablo 2 will be very familiar with this concept. Those of you who think that we shouldn't take cues from video games can go kiss my ass. Yes, I know I've made that joke before. I'm going to keep making that joke because I keep seeing that mindset.
But yes, one thing I'll note for anyone who didn't see our talk on the classes, with how the classes were designed, it wasn't more the classes were the only ones that could do all of these things like you might see in some other systems. It's one of those systems like theoretically anyone can get into just about any aspect of the system, but the classes just kind of amp up whatever aspects they're focused on. So now we're going to actually start looking into what the skills are, which these skill trees and talents seem to be where the core of the mechanics of this game are going to be focused around.
And I should note that the skill trees, like I said, if you're familiar with tree-like design in some MMOs or some CRPGs, you're going to be right at home here. And we already knew that this was going to be a game that is doubling down on the skill system instead of tacking one on like the world's most litigious role-playing game did. I know there's going to be some apologism for the skill system that was put in from 3rd edition onward, but let's be honest, that was tacked on. It wasn't built with it in mind. But obviously, since with some of the talents that are associated with skills, we're not going to go into every single one because that would be a bit excessive, especially for this show. But we are going to hit some highlights, obviously. that being said, would you mind opening up since I had
Yeah.
um
All right. So skill trees. Each skill tree represents an action check you can make to apply a skill. For example, any character can make a light weapon check to attack with a one-handed weapon, although you only get to roll your action dice plus your agility dice, if any. You have the core skill trees, which are the core combat, academic, and practical skill trees are known to all characters. At first level, you may put skill points into any of these skill trees. These are general areas of knowledge and ability available to all characters. Then you have your elite skill trees. Elite skill trees are advanced training you learn from your class, which we talked about a lot of those trees when we went over the classes. These skill trees allow you to learn special abilities either from the tree itself or as techniques or spells from a specific school. Elite skill trees must be learned from races, classes, or talents. Elite skill trees often feature special checks, such as the ability to learn and cast spells, use special techniques, or perform miracles. Using skills. Each core skill tree represents a skill check you can make using one of your ability scores. Which ability score depends entirely on the situation. You might make an awareness empathy check to notice someone lying, or an awareness reason check to note an overlooked detail in an investigation. Most attack skill checks use agility, but you might make a combat skill check under a different ability score to identify a technique, appraise an opponent, or learn a combat technique. For skills and talents, talents refer to abilities purchased with skill points. This can include skill talents that give you bonus dice to specialized skill checks. You always add these bonus dice when making the appropriate skill check, regardless of the ability score. For example, if you have the throwing +2 skill talent, you add 2 bonus dice when you make an aim check, regardless of what ability score you may add. Similarly, if you are called upon to remember some trivia or historical knowledge, this may be a studies history check, but you would also get to add the bonus dice from the studious talent if you have it. And other talents may give special abilities such as a new action or increase your traits or ability scores. The more prerequisites a talent has, the more powerful that talent is. For rank 5, talents often grant high bonuses or powerful abilities. The same is true of general talents that can only be purchased with high ability scores or having accomplished a special deed. Finally, there are class talents. These are powerful talents that characters receive at first level from their class, but can also be acquired later on if they complete training and meet the prerequisites of the class. And for language and literacy, you automatically speak, read, and write your native language. As a first level character, you may read, speak, and write one additional language from each of your memory bonus dice. You may learn languages at any time with research or training.
And let me double check something.
I'll note this is something we've actually seen a lot of, where the stat you apply to your skill check varies.
And it should be noted that memory is a core attribute. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. Oh. And then we have skill points. Having a skill tree does not provide you with any of the skill bonuses or talents in that tree. These must be purchased with skill points. Purchasing skill bonuses or talents will provide you bonus dice with some skill checks, ability bonuses, or other feats related to that skill tree. For example, the sprinting talent under athletics would allow you to run faster. The throwing skill bonus under aim provides a bonus dice to attacks made with thrown weapons and spending skill points. Each skill bonus or skill talent costs 1 skill point. They must be purchased in order. You cannot purchase advanced skills and talents unless you've purchased the prerequisites. As a first level character, you may only purchase rank 1 skill bonuses and talents from any skill tree. This means that you cannot spend all your skill points to max out a single skill tree as a beginning character. You must spend all your skill points at first level. You cannot hold to your initial skill points past level 1 to spend them all in advanced skills. Then right after that we have advancement. Each time you gain a level of experience, you'll gain 1 skill point. Furthermore, you may gain additional skill points as boons from some extraordinary deeds you accomplish in play. Now, the core skill trees that we have are in, and this is basically the core skill list: aim, athletics, awareness, beast handling, crafts, defense, engineering, entertain, heavy weapons, language, larceny, light weapons, medicine, menace, occult, piloting, sciences, social, studies, survival, and unarmed. So, and each of these skills has its own little tree that's usually 5 ranks of skills along several paths. And I'd imagine that if somebody looked at the way these skill trees are designed, they would get flashbacks to Mass Effect, specifically the original Mass Effect, where you actually had some RPG mechanics, not the half in, half out shit we saw in 2 and 3, and Andromeda as well. But nobody likes Andromeda.
Yeah, I'll note just as a quick look, most of all of these trees follow a very similar pattern. For example, it's if you're going for aim, you have one of the lines is throwing, +1 throwing ability, +2 throwing ability, +3 throwing.
Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't a universal instance.
Yes, but
But the general rule is 5 ranks and 4 rows. And fortunately for us, and this is something I like, when it comes to the chart that they have, the type of ability you end up getting, or the type of feature you end up getting, has a shape pattern to indicate how it's going to be working. Like, a lot of the static modifiers are in that hex with a plus at the end of it.
Whereas something like Mighty Throw, it has kind of a
chevron.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what that was called. Or Action Up is a star. So you can kind of just look, and based off the shape of where it is in the tree, you're going to have an idea of what that's actually doing.
Yeah. And each of the abilities is going to be tied to each of the skills is going to be tied to certain abilities. Athletics is going to be tied with aim in some cases. Although this isn't a universal affair, so this, as tempting as it would be to say that the core mechanic is attribute and skill to determine dice pool, that's not exactly the case, as it demonstrates with aim, since it says when you are called upon to make an aim check when attempting to hit a target with a thrown or ranged weapon. I don't like how it opens up in that. Aim skills include archery, firearms, and throwing. Firearms are unique in that you will add your skill bonus to damage if you are proficient, as you do not add any ability scores bonus dice to firearm damage. So in other words, for normal thrown weapons, you would add your agility bonus dice to damage, except for firearms. I think that's something we'll come back to when we get to equipment, because if that's what we're going to be dealing with, then firearms would need something to even that out.
Yeah.
Uh, Although I do like the quote from Alabast here. You need more than practice. Average practice makes average. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Yeah, so I'm kind of just glancing down through a lot of these abilities. Immediately, I'm not seeing anything that's so out there it'd be worth going into much detail on. These core skills trees effectively act exactly as you would expect reading them from just the titles.
Mm-hmm.
But that then will move us on to academic skill trees. We're starting with crafts.
Mm-hmm.
So attempting to build, repair, or manufacture something calls for a craft check. Craft skills are branches of crafts such as metalworking, woodworking, or lapidary.
Wait, you jumped
I,
over.
I oh,
You jumped through
uh,
several pages worth because all I covered was aim. You forgot all the other
uh,
combat skill trees.
that's why I mentioned like a lot of these kind of work how you would think like defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, defense is what you'd use to dodge an attack. Um, and they usually consume vigor because you're using them as reactions.
Yeah,
Heavy weapons are a lot of two-handed
yeah,
weapons. Um, Light weapons are one-handed or hand and a half weapons. Um, Unarmed is exactly what you think it is. And then we get to
yeah,
academic. So like you said crafts
yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, crafts being the first under the academic skill tree.
Mm-hmm.
You got your short list again. You got the metalworking, woodworking, stone cutting, tailor.
Mm-hmm.
Some reason I feel like I'm saying lapidary wrong. It doesn't sound like that's how that should be pronounced.
Probably, but who's counting?
Yeah, again, skill tree here follows kind of the same.
Uh,
Though at rank 3, you do get some interesting ones depending on which one you're putting points into. Like strength up if you put all the ranks into metalworking, stamina for woodworking, reason for stone cutting, agility for tailor.
mm-hmm.
Hold on. Resolve for just craftsman. Let's see, craftsman. You are proficient with your hands in general crafts and maintenance. Add this many bonus dice to your craft checks. So I'm thinking with how this is worded, like once you take anything off the craftsman specific tree, that's going to apply to whichever other crafts you can also do. Is how I'm reading that.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, you only get like a total of +1 to metalworking, which doesn't really follow with the patterns we've had so far.
Yeah, the
So yeah, the craft tree works a little bit differently than some of the others.
mm-hmm.
But
especially
beyond, oh, go on.
especially since crafting can take a lot of different forms.
Then we move on. Then we've got engineering. So working with designing and repairing complex machines and computers calls for an engineering check. You might find that this also encompasses general repair and maintenance. Engineering skills include specific applications of engineering principles, such as automotive mechanics, robotics, and computers.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, this is slightly different like the crafting tree was. But we've got just the general technical stuff, then mechanics, electronics, and computers. Oh, excuse me.
You are excused.
Yeah. But again, everything on the engineering thing covers what you'd probably expect mechanics, electronics, and computer to cover.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get medicine. Principles of medicine are one of the oldest forms of natural philosophy and science. Modern medicine requires extensive training in anatomy, biology, chemistry, and ethics. Medical skills include medical treatment and surgery, as well as medical specialties in pharmacology.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just this is probably the smallest tree we've seen so far, with just the first 5 ranks with treatment. Pick a medical specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Psychotherapy being an option too. So yeah, again, exactly how you'd expect all of this to work. Occult being the next on the list. All things dealing with the workings of magic, rituals, and beliefs of varied religions, and the nature of existential entities. An occult check would be required to recognize a religious artifact, magic scroll, or an apocryphal ritual. Occult skills include understanding of entities, using talismans, and conducting rituals.
Now, it should be noted that occult is not the spellcasting skill per se. Because the way that you do spellcasting is through lens. We won't be getting to lens for a few weeks, but lens is not far removed from materia. Occult is what you could consider petty magic. What would be thaumaturgy in, say, Exalted, or the free access spells in Anima. You know, the lower tier ones, not the ridiculously blowing shit up kind of spells. I guess another way to put it is the more ritualized affairs would fall under occult. If you want to throw a fireball, this is not the skill you should be using. Uh, let's see. Then we have the next skill that we have is sciences, which only has one line. Understanding complicated scientific material and applying those skills requires a sciences check. You may be called upon to make a sciences check when you attempt to gain understanding of phenomena, create new materials, or understand complicated mathematics. Something I do find interesting is that the cap for any skill bonus dice that you're ever going to get is 3. Let's see. Then
I will say also, while there is only the one line for the science tree, like one of the previous skills, you are going to be picking a specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on which specialty you pick, gives you a different bonus effectively. But for just general knowledge about sciences, this seems to pretty much cover it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we get to studies. This very broad skill tree encompasses general and specific knowledge regarding any number of subjects such as history, bureaucracy, literature, and philosophy. You may be called upon to make a studies check to recall a bit of history or lore, or to understand a cultural reference. Studies skills are each branches of academic knowledge, such as lore and trivia, modern history, or regulation and law. And I've mentioned this before, but I'm always kind of iffy about knowledge skills in TTRPGs, largely because it's one of those things that can get out of hand very quickly if left unchecked.
Yeah. This seems to keep it pretty localized. Or very small. Like, Studious just seems to kind of encapsulate everything. You get up to Studious 2. For the +3, though, that's when you'd have, if you want like the full 3 dice, then you're going to have to pick the specialty, basically.
I will note one particular pet peeve I have with the way the abilities are listed in several of these trees. I understand to a point why it's done, but I wish they were in alphabetical order instead of in order from top to bottom on the skill tree itself, because that's going to make things tricky to look up when you need to look up the effect of a particular talent right now. A case in point in, say, studies would be well educated. That's just a I realize that might be a bit OCD on my part, but it's one of those things I can't ignore.
I don't think it's too much of an issue because, like, for example, everything on studies is basically on that same page with like 2 skills that leak over into the next one. If this was a much bigger list, I'd see it being a problem. But it's small enough, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Yeah. See, then we have the practical skill trees, starting with athletics. Running, jumping, swimming, and climbing, you may be called upon to make an athletics check for many physical activities. Athletics skills involve including advanced climbing, tumbling, and dancing. And then we get to, although I do like the capstone feature of at rank 5, where you get, which is giving you +30 vigor. Then we have awareness, which is self-explanatory. Beast handling, also self-explanatory. Entertain, which doesn't even go up to 5 ranks, it only goes up to 3. And unfortunately, they don't go to 11. Sad. Then larceny. Then menace, which is this game's version of intimidation, which is one of the one of the skills that's listed for it. Then piloting, which is self-explanatory. Then social. So this is your diplomancer skill. Then survival, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then it gets to the general talents. Talents give you unique bonuses or abilities or modify your skills. Most talents are purchased through skill trees, but some can be purchased outright. These are general talents. While most talents will provide a static bonus to a trait or an action roll, some will simply provide access to other abilities, allowing you to develop some extraordinary skills. Talents cost 1 skill point to acquire. Most talents can be purchased once, but a few can be purchased more than once, each time gaining the benefits listed. These will be listed in the description. Some talents are only available to first level characters. This will be noted under the talent's title. The following talents are available to all characters first level and beyond. The only prerequisite is that you have enough skill points to purchase the ability. And what we have here is a collection of not talents that wouldn't be associated with any particular skill. Things like and some of them are listed as first level talent. Also, much like with 4th edition, it's through the talent system that we get our multi-classing. Since one of the general talents you can pick is class training, which reads, you must be at least level 2 to select this talent. Select one vocational, augmented, or ancestral class for which you already meet all requirements. By purchasing this talent, you may spend your skill points to acquire skill trees and talents from this class, and it becomes your secondary class. Once you've purchased the class training talent for your desired secondary class, access to each of the class's elite skill trees costs 1 skill point, at which point you may purchase skills or talents from that tree. You may purchase class talents at the cost of 1 skill point each, provided you meet any level or skill requirements. So instead of having to finagle about taking levels in various classes, class training, boom, now you can spend skill points in another class. Which, I honestly like that.
Yeah. It is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And considering how the system works, I'm presuming that seems like a fair cost for what you're getting. Because you're having to first spend the point just to get access to that class. And you don't just get the stuff from the class, you're having to buy it up like you would other talents.
Yeah, the vibe I get from this is the multi-class feats in D&D 4th edition.
Yeah.
Instead of having to take a level in a class that you wanted its features from, you take a buy-in feat to get the baseline class features, the level 1 class features, and then you could take additional feats to get powers from that other class. Which I'm making it sound like that's a lot, but really it isn't. You're sacrificing your feat slots to get powers for another class.
Yeah, I'm looking over these real quick, and so far it's another one that I'm not seeing any that really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
But the talents I'm seeing are still very nice to have.
Yeah. But overall, that more or less covers the talent system, as well as skills. I would say that the skill system that we have here is significantly better than systems I've seen in other affairs.
Like nothing about the system like really stands out like it's doing anything really great, but it's functional, does what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really any fat here, and it's very easy to follow and understand. It's what I'd ask and hope for out of a skill system.
Mm-hmm. Which definitely makes sense. I mean, this isn't something where you'd want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So having it kept relatively simple is going to be an ideal situation.
Yes.
Especially since we've seen plenty of affairs that
They try to overcomplicate everything.
Mm-hmm. and obviously that's not something that we have here.
Yeah.
Especially, look, when I got my start in talking about indie tabletop, there were plenty of games that had these ridiculous skill lists. So I am always grateful whenever I don't have to deal with that. But that is going to do it for this particular episode. I think next week we have, let me see. Well, next week we're doing martial techniques. The I know one might ask, wait, what? We're not covering advancement? There's not really a whole lot to cover. You gain experience, you go up levels, you get skill points for that. You get either a D8 or D10 based on um for health. Um
It's a very basic leveling system that
mhm.
you really don't need us going into that much detail on.
The only non-standard thing would be deeds, which I'd say are kind of like achievements. If you accomplish a certain thing, you get a certain perk out of it.
I'm not entirely sure how I feel about using a system like that in a tabletop. I've not really come across it before, so I don't really have any real thoughts on it.
I don't mind it, honestly. I will always appreciate any sort of non-standard approach to advancement. One example deed is Odysseus Arrow. To accomplish it, you have to make a successful critical hit with a bow or crossbow at long range a total of 10 times. If you're playing a decent length campaign and you with as some sort of archer archetype, you're going to end up doing that eventually. Maybe in less amount of times depending on how often you're in combat or how often the combatants, not the combatants, how often you roll lucky enough to pull that off.
Yeah. My only worry with a system like that, like I don't know if it'd be much of a worry here, depending on the conditions and odds, but chances that sometimes you're just going to get unlucky, and now your advancement may end up behind in that regard to
No,
other.
there's not that. It doesn't seem to give that particular vibe.
Yeah, that'd be my only real worry about a achievement type system like this. But I haven't looked over everything, so I have no idea
And
whether that even be an issue
deeds
here.
deeds are completely divorced from, say, experience.
Yeah,
It's not like it. It's more like you're doing a certain thing and then doing it enough times you end up
yeah,
getting a free feat essentially.
yeah,
Like the perk you get from Odysseus Arrow, you no longer have a challenge when making attack rolls with bows at
yeah.
long range.
Yes, but inevitably, odds are going to have some characters ended up with notably less of these perks.
I think that's going to be
Yeah,
a table by table thing. It's not something we
yeah,
can really grade from our
yeah,
standing.
yeah. It's how do the odds of all these worked out? How well are the conditions balanced out?
Hmm.
I have no idea how that actually play out on a table. Is the thing.
Yeah, I just
That's my only thing that I might have an issue with a system like that.
that
But I don't
that's
know how warranted those concerns actually are.
not not by much, but
Yeah, none of these conditions seem so crazy.
mhm.
So I don't expect it to be an issue here. And that's about as far as I'll go with that.
Yeah. But with that said, that's going to do it for this particular episode. We'll be back here with more of Cursebrand next week. And stay tuned for a couple things, since obviously tomorrow I'm pulling double duty because I'm doing Valley of the Judged with Zan, and then after that I'm jumping right on Theodore Locus's stream for his episode of Talks in Library. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up talking with him for 7 hours again. And of course, on Saturday I've got Adventures with You,
Yep.
and then I've got Cloister the Dice shortly after that, uh, with the creator of Sake being the GM for a guest one shot, as is tradition on the last Saturday of the month. There will be no Geek Watch, but but the Q&A is being done on Sunday afternoon. It'll be right at high noon Central Time, so adjust for your time zones accordingly. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.